Hi, and welcome to Tinkering Every Day. I'm Jesse. Today we're going to look at the WaveShare game hat, and that is coupled with a Raspberry Pi 3 B+. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at it. Okay, here is the WaveShare game hat. Now they call it a game hat because it actually fits over a Raspberry Pi 3 B+. So what it does for you is instead of playing your Raspberry Pi on a big screen TV or any other monitor for that matter, you can take it on the go and you can play it. It turns your Raspberry Pi into a handheld, which I thought was pretty neat. Now, they call it a game hat because it just fits over top. It wasn't really designed to be a console in itself. It was just an add-on for your existing peripheral. So it's not very ergonomic. The buttons are kind of clicky. I mean, it's crude, but it looks cool. If you're a tech guy and you like unique things, your friends will definitely be kind of like, what is that? Because it looks really techy. I mean, you can see all the guts of it. It's a really neat thing. I mean, it's not super comfortable because these sharp edges, it kind of digs into you a little bit. After playing it for a while, your hands get tired. It is pretty thick. It's over an inch thick, so it kind of gets hard to grip sometimes. But I mean, overall, just the cool factor of having your Raspberry Pi 3 B+. I mean, you can play Mario 64 or GoldenEye in the palm of your hand. That's pretty neat. Now, since this thing really kind of hit a few years ago, a couple years ago, but they've come out with the GameBerry or the Game Boy that can do all that too. That's way more ergonomic. That'd be better, but I mean it's 4 times more expensive. I think this is like $50. I mean, of course, you've got the added cost of your Raspberry Pi, but if you already have one of those and all the stuff to run it, already have it set up, an extra $40-50, and now you got a handheld. I think it's a pretty neat little thing. So let's do a quick teardown here. Let's take this thing off. Show you what the Raspberry Pi looks like if you haven't seen one. And this WaveShare usually comes just like a satin, shiny black plastic. I actually found from another YouTuber that he got some 3M vinyl wrap that was a carbon fiber type look, and I really like that result that he came up with. So I also wrapped mine in carbon fiber. It really has a custom sporty look to it. I was really impressed with that. It looks way better than that cheapo standard plastic. I was going to tell you about this thing that I recommend for tinkering on everything. I'm not even using it. Look at that. When you're tinkering on anything that has screws or small parts, this magnetic collection tray will save you a lot of heartache from screws flying around on the table and onto the floor. Just kind of forgot I had it there. Sorry about that. Not even doing my own practices. Look at that. It's alright, we're all human. Sure you'll forgive me. All right. I even wrapped the back of it so it would look cool and kind of looking through it too. So there we are. There's the Raspberry Pi underneath. It uses a vaping device battery. You find any major vapes. Ooh, the Batman game started up. I'm gonna turn this off before we disconnect it. Okay. All right. So let's see here. I believe it's just connected by the GPIO pins. Now it has an adapter that taps into the HDMI port here. Actually couples the HDMI port from the game hat to the HDMI port on the Raspberry Pi. So that's a neat little thing, just a coupler to couple it in. So a cool little thing I found out about this is if you want to turn it into a game console, like you go to a hotel and now you have a controller and you don't really want to, you want to sit it in more of kind of a permanent gaming situation for say when you're away at a hotel, you can take this adapter out and then plug in your HDMI cord right to the dedicated board itself, and then plug it into the TV, and then it'll bypass the screen on this, and then you can just use it as a home console at that point. And if I remember correctly, I was able to actually use this as a controller while still plugged into a different TV as well. Don't quote me on that. I'm pretty sure that was a cool thing that I committed to memory. But it may not work with your application, but I'm pretty sure it worked with this one, if I remember correctly. It's been a while since I tried that. But there's my Raspberry Pi. I gave it the heatsink upgrade kit. It's kind of required if you don't have a fan. I mean, this thing kind of heats up when I'm playing PlayStation or more intensive games. I wish they made a way to get a fan in here, but there's just not enough room. And there's the vape battery. That's really all it is. That's why they call it a hat. It just fits right on top there. And just a couple of stands and a circuit board and an LCD screen and front plate. Buttons are integrated in. Pretty simple. Let's put it all. Now, kind of an assembly video. So when you get it in the box, it's in multiple pieces like this. This piece is separate. I'm not going to take that apart. You can use your imagination. It's all contained. So this is just a front plate. The buttons are all permanently fused to the board. So you don't have to, when you get it, the buttons are already assembled. So you just screw these 6 screws on for the base plate. Flip it over. Take your Raspberry Pi. The GPIO pen slot here, you just set it down. Very gently, you don't want to bend any pins, that would be bad. Give it an even, firm press like that. Got to remember our HDMI adapter here. And it doesn't really matter which way it goes. I mean, it can only really fit one way. Get that in there evenly. Try not to go in uneven and bend anything. Alright, put that back here. That's for your SD card. You even have a nice SD card access slot. That was a neat little feature. Make sure I got the right side. So you have to take the whole darn thing apart just to switch out your SD cards in case you got images or different games profiles that you want to load. And just do it right out the back. Alright, I'm going to put the battery back in. Make sure you've got your positives and negatives. You do not want to ground one of these out. If you've seen all the horror stories with vape explosions and all that, you can always make sure that your contacts are the way they're supposed to be. We got right here positive and negative, positive and negative. Make sure we're in the right slot. We do not want to blow up our basement. Alright, get that back on there. It's really easy. I like the fact that it's just 6 screws. It's in case you do need to change something out, or you just want your Raspberry Pi out of there, you can do it really fast. 6 screws and it's out of there. And a little trick, a little tinkering top tip. You have a regular standard screwdriver. See, another cool thing about this little collection plate is it's magnetic. So if you take your screwdriver and just kind of leave it here for a few seconds, minute, you can actually magnetize your tip. So then you can pick up your screws and they won't fall all over the place. It'll actually magnetically hold it there real nice for you. That in there makes it a heck of a lot faster. And then dropping out right when you get to the slot there. Oop, so magnetic. I won't let it go. There we are. There we have it. That's the Waveshare game hat. Let me pop this analog stick back on there. Yeah, it's funny, they used basically an analog stick from a PlayStation 2 like DualShock controller. Looks a heck of a lot like one of those if you take one apart. This stick definitely is the PS1, PS2 DualShock. So it's kind of awkward. A lot of people have complained about just the cheap clunkiness of this joystick, and they'd rather have a D-pad. But as far as like playing PlayStation games, or no, I'm sorry, N64 games and arcade games, I actually prefer the joystick, and I spend most of my time playing N64, Mario, and it's a heck of a lot better to use than a D-pad. So as far as my application and what I really wanted to do with this is play N64 games on the go, I'm glad that they went with the joystick. It makes Nintendo games a heck of a lot harder to play. They're still playable. It doesn't feel the same. It's awkward. But I mean, like I said, I do most of my gaming on this thing for the N64. So keep that in mind. And as far as N64, but the kind of caveat to that is, if you like the basic games, like GoldenEye kind of struggles a little bit, Mario struggles in certain maps, but it's still playable. N64 games have a hard time on the Raspberry Pi 3B Plus. With the Raspberry Pi 4, I think they're getting a better job on the emulation and the power of it and how it's handling the N64 emulator. This one struggles with a lot of games. A lot of games crash, but as far as like Mario and just kind of messing around with the basic kind of pack-in games, it does all right. Hydro Thunder does all right. Beetle Adventure Racing does fine. So if you like those games, I mean, I really love GoldenEye and Mario, so that's kind of what I use it for. But if I want to switch up and play some Nintendo or a little bit of Tomb Raider or some Command and Conquer for the PlayStation or Warcraft, I can switch over and do that too. It does. The funny part is it does PS1 way better than it does N64, and that was considered maybe a superior machine. Some people that do research on the hardware in an N64 might argue a little bit as far as the 3D graphics rendering. So I think as far as rendering 3D, it gives this thing a heck of a lot more run than a PlayStation does. But I mean, it just depends on what games you want, but it does pretty good. It's a cool little thing. Definitely kind of a topic for discussion among gamers because it's quirky, it's weird, nobody's really seen it before. So yeah, if you're interested in a quirky little handheld that you can kind of put together and program yourself, that's the Waveshare game hat. It's a pretty neat little thing. If you'd like to see more videos on this or anything else in my game room, watch my game room tour for ideas. And as always, keep tinkering every day.